let's go.
Thanks for joining us. We're excited to give you guys some updates on August and the MyCarrier platform. With me today is Mike Bookout, and we're going to walk you through on some of the new things available in the MyCarrier TMS, how it affects our shippers, how it affects our carrier partners, and the industry more broadly.
Yeah, and some of the things that we've really focused on going into this next quarter, wrapping up quarter two and going into Q3, is the hot topic that's out there is AI, right? Everybody's been talking about AI. Well, for somebody like me, it's like, well, what is it? How do you use it? How can I intertwine it into my daily operations? Is it going to take over a job? I don't know, right? And those are some of the things that we want to talk about today on the new technology, like Chris had alluded to, that is coming out in the MyCarrier platform that we wanted to share with you guys today, but also kind of walk through and unpack some of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So not only with AI being a tool to be able to help us create product that allows customers to more accurately understand their shipping. And I think you're going to see that kind of in a theme of things we're going to talk about is how these tools empower the application to educate and inform. So whether we get into our freight assist and how it helps identify sites, getting into our NMFC verification, understanding what you're shipping in the freight classification, but all the way through into our precision payments and being able to execute that digital record to your carriers. So
would you almost call it a little bit of like a transparency that's coming forth into the shipper's hands, right? Instead of not quite knowing what type of site location that is, right? Or, hey, I don't even know what my classification is. Really bringing that forth and that transparency to the actual shipper so that you guys can now be empowered to make those decisions.
Yeah, think about it. Years ago, right? It pretty much was like, here's LTL shipping, figure it out, right? Okay, you got to figure out, get a quote, figure out where you're shipping, figure out all the nuance, your freight. All of that was just manual or disparate, just separate systems. Now we've really centralized that all in one place. So all of those things you might be doing individually, now you're doing it all in one place.
Yeah, and I think that kind of brings us to one of the first one of the new launches that we're having that's coming out in Q3 is Freight Assist for accessorial validation or site type validation, right? How many times have you as a shipper gone to a consignee, typed in some information, not knowing if a liftgate or inside delivery is needed, right? How does the system or software start to understand what type of site type you're going to make sure that, one, you're quoting your customer that's receiving the goods the right amount, right? One of the hardest things to be able to go do is go back to your customer and ask for more money. So how can we start to understand at the beginning of that quote flow, what information is out there? What can I actually go gravitate towards that will give me that full picture of where I'm shipping to?
Absolutely. So we heard from shippers, right? There were so many processes they did to figure out what were those site types. They're going on Google Maps. They're looking at images. They're going in and researching company websites. They're going in and calling their customer. They're going in looking at records and maybe even county records of what is it zoned or how. We heard a million different ways they were doing it. The great part about using AI, and we know it's a buzzword, but also using agentic AI, is we can have bots out there doing every single one of those things that humans were doing before. So we really crowdsource how do shippers identify sites? How do we make this most accurate? And we're able to go out there and execute all of those in real time and marry up all that information. So you get a really deep insight into what that site is.
Yeah, I believe we've got about a couple hundred customers out there on beta now. We've got really good test results coming in. But again, one of the biggest things that you've got to learn about any type of new technology is making sure that it is understanding the information correctly. Right. And I think that's one of the biggest things that where people are a little hesitant with AI because they hear, what's that word they use? Hallucination.
Yeah.
Right. The system will hallucinate by itself. It doesn't know what it's doing. It will just create its own answer. So one of the things that we've done here at the MyCarrier facility with our team, we call it I think it's the MyCarrier AI Labs. That team is really tasked with running multiple scenarios, making sure the information is coming back validated, right? Because we know that this is suggestive up front. We still want to make sure that you guys are validating that as well, right? Hey, I know I've been here before. Yes, this information is correct. So for as much as we're putting into it, the community, you guys, the shippers, the users of the product are giving us validation every time you guys click on that, saying, yes, this is that type of site type. I really appreciate that. And then we can verify it on the back end with an invoice.
Absolutely. So now we can understand and get these confidence confidence, right? So not only in case there is hallucinations in AI, we can show and display that to you, what the confidence we have in that. Very rarely are we gonna have a very low confidence. There is a confident response, but you can now look in there as well. So we're going to display and pull up information about that site so you can look side by side and check what the AI is doing and see in real time how it came to that recognition of that site. See that image, research it further if you want, but really learn and build confidence in that AI. Because again, you use it every day, probably, doing search or whatever. And sometimes that 1 out of 10, it really kind of goes sideways.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So with us, like I said, we're excited for this product to come out. We're excited to get feedback. One of the things that on the MyCarrier platform, you shippers that are out there, you guys have always given us phenomenal feedback. We value that. This is how we continue to go build products like this Freight Assist that's coming out here shortly in Q3.
And then leading from Freight Assist, right? So now you know what your sites are. So already there's so many powerful tools embedded, pre-populating information for you. But one area we've always wanted to get into is freight classification, right? And the NMFTA, and that's a proprietary data set out there, and it requires each individual shipper to go license that. We're excited to announce that we have a partnership and licensing with the NMFTA to make that available to our pro users, to be able to embed into the quoting application, as well as your commodity list, the ability to look up your freight class. We heard time and time again from shippers, what is your freight class? How do you know it? And time again, I think one of the most common answers is a sticky note left by my predecessor on the shipping computer. So it obviously leads into downstream issues we're going to get into around our freight audit and our, precision payments and, trying to deal with those discrepancies on the back end. But really now you have the ability to get that right up front, be able to research commodities, or especially with that big change that just happened right on July 19th, we saw over 50% of commodities in the platform go through this big docket change. And you can just look up your NMFC number and make sure you're staying up to date and keep up to date with the most late subs and your actual freight class.
Well, and again, right, it goes back to making sure you're taking care of your customer that is buying your freight, right, or buying your product. Make sure that the site type is correct. Make sure that your classification is correct, especially with those changes, right? A lot more of the classes are moving to density-based. Mm-hmm. Again, another big proponent of that is MyCarrier, to make sure that you ensure the right dimensions in there with the right classification, because the subs changed from sub 11 to sub 13.
Yep.
That was a big change, right? If you're not on top of that or have information at your fingertips to validate that, you could result in a rebill for you, which is going to lead to an increased cost for your customer.
Yeah. And I know you guys have probably seen the emails. We've been trying to educate out there. Sorry, there's too many. But if you haven't seen this, or you haven't, or just recently came on the MyCarrier platform, I mean, this change just happened a few weeks ago. There's no better time to get in and take a quick look. You might be having a lot of unexpected invoices coming in, but now you can still get ahead of it. You're right. You might have some discrepancies, but you can get ahead of it before it has a real impact. Make sure you know what your freight costs when you're quoting that out to your end customer, right? We talk to many shippers, right? The industry's tight. Your whole margin might be a rebill, right, in what their cost of goods. So being able to have an accurate price up front when you're quoting your customer.
Accurate price up front, but also on the other side of that equation is the carrier that's handling your freight, right? Making sure that's the right site types for your carrier so they can prepare to ensure that that quoted transit time is met, because they now know everything that's required at time of delivery. The other part of that is also making sure you have the right classification. That way it's nice and smooth throughout the carrier. Anytime that you get reclassed, that is a cost for the carrier, which is going to associate a cost for you. So again, getting that information right up front before you actually dispatch that freight is a huge benefit to all sides of the equation.
That's a good call out, right? These inefficiencies cost it for both the shipper and the carrier, and there's fees for that. Not only are you going to have your additional weight or the reclass, you're going to have a fee, you're going to have the corrective fee, and now you also have an invoice you need to go research, look up, and figure out what to do with. So getting that right up front, that's where we spend so much of our time thinking about how do we help give tools to shippers to get it right up front, because it's going to save everyone time on the back end.
Absolutely. So, all right, we've covered kind of that front end of the quote flow, right? So as we get past that and go validate the information and we start to dispatch out to the carrier, what are some of the things that I know that we're working on, right? I think one of them is e-bill of lading, right? We've got a couple carrier partners out there that are live inside of the software now. But what is e-bill of lading? I know we've been out there talking with carriers. We've been out there talking with customers. How do customers start? What does it actually do?
Yeah, I mean, to unpack e-bill of lading, it can mean so many different things in our industry, right? Yeah, exactly. That's the problem. Is e-bill of lading is a very evolving, concept in our industry, right? It might be as simple if you get technical.
I got a question. Is a dispatch the same as e-bill of lading?
No. So that is an interesting so not only do you have this concept, right, of dispatching, you're giving just the carrier basic information to come pick up that freight. The e-bill of lading, in my definition, is that identical one-for-one representation of that paper bill of lading. Just having every bit of detail about that shipment into the carrier system, right? That's what's going to let them have the efficiencies to digitally interact, just like parcel.
So it's almost like a dispatch on steroids.
Pretty much. It's going to have any and every field you have in your bill of lading, right? So anything you'd put on that bill of lading, getting transmitted electronically to the carrier. They're going to know everything about your shipment.
Nice. All right. So now we've got the electronic bill of lading that's passing over to the carrier. What does that mean for the industry moving forward? Who sees the benefits of that? Me as a shipper, do I see that? As a carrier, do I see the benefits? Is it again, same thing for both sides?
Yeah. So the benefits vary by the party. So there are some harder, numbers behind the carrier side, right? That is a big thing why e-bill lading is out there and being pushed in the industry is it creates efficiencies for the carriers, right? You're getting away from that paper invoice being scanned, having to be analyzed, having to be entered into systems, the things that come along it. But also on the shipper side, there are definitely soft savings, right? Whether you want to see or not, there are invoices that get misbilled, right? You are relying on humans to type in data. There are going to be invoice issues that come in play because of that. You're completely removing humans from having to be in that data translation layer, just give you a more accurate invoice. Also, some of you that have busy docks, scan and go, right? The driver's in and out quick. So if you do have a busy dock.
Scan and go, right? So no longer the driver, he might have a dyad, but generally when he scans now, he still has to tie in the destination zip code, maybe the pieces, the weights, maybe some address validation. Yep. So you're telling me with e-bill of lading now, the driver can actually just scan and go and doesn't have to type anything into there.
Scan and go. I think the easiest comparison is to parcel, right? In our industry, in the parcel industry, but logistics more broadly, is FedEx and UPS, everything's a label, scan. There's more information behind the scenes, right? The weight, the DIMS, all of that.
And we have labels. We have labels inside of MyCarrier.
Absolutely. So the labels you can put there. If you want 4 per pallet every side, you pick the number you want, have the barcode everywhere on your shipment. Not going to get lost. Same thing I do on my luggage. Take all the stickers when you check it with the airline. So again, helps to make sure you don't get lost freight. But it's only with the postal service that you can still handwrite stuff and just hand it to them, right? So the efficiency that we saw with UPS and FedEx now is bringing that into the
So
LTL
with the e-bill of lading, I've got carrier efficiency, I got my dock efficiency. Okay, I can see some of the benefits for that. And I think if what we've always talked about here at MyCarrier is we're really having that digitization of the LTL freight, right? Now, if we go take a step back, we got the beginning of the quote flow. We're validating site type. We're validating the NMFC. We're getting your dimensions in there, making sure that the density is correct. Then when you dispatch it out, we're electronically dispatching that information over to the carrier with pertinent information that allows them to go start invoicing correctly with a one-to-one match.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
Yep.
All right. So now we're kind of on that front end, right? All the way now to dispatch out to the carrier.
Yep.
What else are we working on here from an AI perspective? I know I'm really excited for this one, but it has to do with one of the big things. So we just got done conducting a survey with Masio, and we found out from you, the shippers, one of the biggest pain points you have out there is invoice disputes and payments, right? And that's one of the things I think we're tackling next, and that we're going to be launching out here in Q3 as well. Right. So I know as a shipper, if I get a reclassification that has an added accessorial, sometimes it is very difficult to read those invoices. They come different from every carrier. Some have deficit weights. Some clearly call that out. Some do not. And again, it's just kind of the wild, wild west when it comes to invoicing with LTL carriers.
Yeah.
What are we doing on that back end utilizing Freight Assist to help with that problem?
Yeah. So the first big part, right, is the digitization of that invoice. Just like we talked about in the bill of lading, you're dealing with a paper. We surveyed our customers. So, we saw in the respondents, just under 50% were still getting via mail, right? And the other half were getting it via PDF, via email. So pretty much, technology that was here 30 years ago, right? AOL. There we go. So we're still using.
Did you actually see the article on AOL?
No.
It finally, was it yesterday, marked 30 years, and they're retiring the dial-up service.
Oh, yes, because there was some rural point. Yes.
AOL dial-up.
I don't even know how you load a website nowadays on dial-up.
I didn't know that was still available.
Don't even know how that would work. So, but yeah,
Sorry, sidetrack.
whether they're mailing it or you're getting a PDF, that still is a physical document essentially, right? You are just having an image representation. So you're having to type that into a system, print. Here, many shippers even print that out, right? Give it to the traffic manager, give it to the shipping manager, try to understand what to do with it. So before we even get into auditing the bill, the thing is, what is this invoice? What's it paired to, right? And we know something very important too, especially the accounting users, right? It's that three-way match. It's being able to identify the PO, right? That purchase order. That is the shipping record you made in our system, right? The ability for you to enter the PO.
Pro number.
Right.
It is
no.
Your as a shipper.
Shippers are PO number. Yes. So we always marry that up. For the application, always talking PO on the shipper. On the carrier side, always talking pro, and we're marrying those up behind the scenes at a, if you use our bill of lading, 100%, right? Because it's scanning, it's matching on that barcode, you have a perfect pair there. So not only are you now getting that invoice, many ways we can ingest it using really cool new AI OCR, right? Pulling it in and dynamically reading it. Yeah, OCR's been around. Yeah, you can read how much is it going to cost, some stuff, but really capturing every bit of that thing, the details about the deficit weight, the lines, every bit of text, how to structure that. The reason that's so important is now that we pulled all that in, we can do that full audit you mentioned. We can leverage AI to start looking through your quote record and every bit of data we can capture on that invoice and start auditing and help explain. And just rather than auditing and saying, hey, there's a difference, it's about taking it to give you human explanations, right? That's why AI is so powerful. And I think why we like it in our everyday life. It gives you very explainable reasons why in very natural language. So that is what really differentiates our AI audit.
So from the audit perspective, I'll be able to review my original quote that was out there with all my three-way matches. I'll have my PO number, my pro number sitting there. Then I'll have the new invoice that is coming in, side-by-side comparison will show me where the differences, if there are any.
Yep.
And then it will give me a brief explanation in detail on what was changed and why.
Absolutely. And we've seen some.
And does that go both ways, right? So if it's an undercharge or an overcharge, you'll be able to see both.
Absolutely. And we call them out and report on that, right? So you can see overall your overages and underages. I mean, carriers are out there. They're honest. They're W&I guys.
I was going to say,
trying to get it right. They want it right.
Especially with the new density changes, there's some that have gone favorable into the shipper side to where all of a sudden what was class 70 might now be a class 65 or a class 60, right? That is money back to you as a shipper as long as you understand why that happened.
Yep. So, and then to the final part, that three-way match, the DR, the POD, whatever you want to call it, sitting right there, right? So now you've gone from just having an email inbox to figure out what to do with, are these even valid bills, right? Were they billed to me by accident? I was just talking to a customer and they're in a commercial warehouse shared by so many tenants, and that's a big problem they deal with. They deal with, yep, exactly, billing to the wrong one and having to get it corrected. That's just a part of the game.
And now you're empowering your accounting office to have a lot more information at their fingertips where they might not have to always go necessarily talk with the shipping department or make them aware of, hey, this is now a different type of site type, which I'm also going to tie back into our AI Freight Assist that's going to start to understand any dispute that comes in or resolution off of that dispute, whether it's an added accessorial, to give you that information back on the front end of that quote.
Absolutely. So now that you've audited it, you have all these invoices ready to pay, right? And what we see is 4 out of 5 come in, right? Auto approved right away, system process, matched down to the penny, good to go. And then the other 1 out of 5, something happened, accessorial, you name it. Exactly. Working through and resolving that. So now that you have these, you're moving into payments. And that's something we're excited about with Precision Payments is you can pay all of your carriers in just a click. So you can select any invoices that are due, click agnostic of the carrier, right? If you want to pay a handful of carriers in one in batch.
2 different ways I can pay, ACH or credit card?
Absolutely. Yep. And you can still pay by the shipment, right? If you need to get a quick pay, get to the carrier, maybe there's an old aging and you're dealing with your carrier rep, click pay right there, get that process fast. But also, if you're running that big check cut, right, you can process it all. And this is where our industry goes back to paper again, right? What happens? Typically, a paper check with a physical remittance doesn't maybe have the pro number, right? That's what the carrier speaks in. You speak in PO at the shipper. So now you're having to try to marry up what you're paying for. And this is where you get to records that don't match.
System will do all that for you.
Exactly.
That's pretty clean.
Yep. So really removing the guesswork out of it. And you know, one thing kind of is a secondary benefit we hear from operations. I know a lot of times, you know, when the carrier rep comes in there to help coordinate on business, thing that talks about is aging. What are open disputes? What are open aging?
You brought something up, disputes.
Yep.
What happens if I have a dispute that I want to go make with that specific carrier because I saw a difference that I don't agree with?
Yep.
What type of information am I able to upload a weight certificate or a product spec sheet? Is that something available in the product?
Yeah. So we talked with shippers and carriers alike, right? And we found on average, the response was about 4 emails go back and forth. Shipper says, hey, I have a quote. Carrier says, hey, I have an invoice, both trying to figure out what record you're talking about. So that's usually about 4 emails. What we did instead is now that you have the audit, you know why it's different, now having a workflow to file a dispute. So go into your workflow and then based on your type, if it's an accessorial, great. Upload like a Google image or upload information from your customer. Reweigh reclass, ability to upload the certificate from your scale and your product spec sheet or just a spec sheet if you're dealing with a reclass. Get that whole dispute up there, accurate up front, and transmit in a single button to the carrier so that you guys both are saving the back and forth. You have a packet ready to go.
And now I've got that information also in MyCarrier platform. So if I ever need to go back and reference that shipment again, everything is saved in there.
So jumping back into that, dealing with, you talking to your carrier rep, right? And collaborating, your disputes are all sitting there, right? So you're not managing paper, Excel, trying to figure out what's open, what's short paid, what's not approved.
Ooh, let me go by the file real quick. Hold on.
Oh, trust me, how many times did we would work Excel sheets every month back when we were on the other side of the industry, and it is daunting. And we hear they just don't know. You don't intend to be on credit hold. You don't intend to have these old ones, but you end up with things that fall through the crack from 3, 6, 12 months ago. The great part now is instead of you having to go to accounting, come back, work through that with the carrier rep, everything's in the portal in front of you. You know what's paid, what's open, what disputes are. You can literally click through. If a carrier says, hey, let's talk about these couple of shipments, pull it up in 2 seconds on the system.
You know, one of the things I like about the tool as well, I'm not the most tech savvy person. Yes, I'm not the most tech savvy. But one thing I do like about the flow that we have always created, and I think one thing that we hear from our shippers is it is very intuitive as you're walking through. I don't have to click on any extra buttons really to go dive in to find out what this issue is or how I might get it corrected. Or if everything's clear, like you said, click to pay.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice and simple. And I think that's one of the things that is very important when you design a piece of technology, whether you're introducing AI or a new workflow, that it's intuitive.
Yeah.
And that's where I really implore anybody that's on side of our software, in our software, go play around with it. I know we have a free 30-day trial you can get in there. Go explore the software. Go try some of these new tools that we have coming out.
But yeah, once you're in, you can now see where you're at on the shipment, right? So now you're paying the carrier's paid, you can make quick dispositions and resolve any discrepancies. I mean, that's what you come down to. And we always have our commitment, right, to have that free platform out for their shippers, to digitize this industry. That was one of our missions. But there are so many powerful premium features we have behind the scenes for very low monthly costs or even no upfront costs with some of our new payment offerings where you can pay per shipment and just get that benefit.
And the ROI is there on those tools. And that's what we've found.
Absolutely.
And that's what our customers have been telling us. Hey, you guys do need to charge a little bit for this because I am saving this amount of money now. And it's not necessarily saving it, but it's accounting for that charge so you don't have to go back to your customer to go rebuild them.
Yep. And just not having to deal with all the discrepancies, right? Solve them on the front end. And if you don't, on the back end, make it extremely efficient. Spend minutes instead of hours trying to resolve these discrepancies.
Well, I'm Mike Bookout. I appreciate you guys listening to us ramble on here for about 5-10 minutes today. Along with me here is Chris Scheid.
Yeah, and I would say explore the system. Check it out. We appreciate you guys spending the time listening in. There's so much behind the scenes. Check out settings. Check out some of the benefits. Check out one thing I always want to call out, being able to email that consignee information on your tracking. That's such an underused feature. Yes. Create that parcel-like experience. So explore the application, take a few minutes, and discover what's behind the scenes.
Thank you, guys.